Could he give us an introduction to this plant and tell us why it's particularly important to Ukraine's energy supply?
The nuclear plants of Ukraine account for about 55% of the energy needs of our country. Our plant is responsible for about 12% of those 55. Meeting your energy needs is a cornerstone of any successful economy, and people do need power and lights in their houses.
Has this plant become more crucial as others have come under attack during the invasion?
So far, it has not. Rivne power generation still follows the same plan that had been set up long time before the war broke out. Now, should Zaporizhzhia be shut down completely though, we would likely be forced to ramp up to our full capacity depending on the customer loads, of course.
Have there been other changes? Like have workers left or just other modifications to their work that they've had to make since the invasion began?
Some have quit and left the country to stay with their friends and relatives. About 20 of our staff members left their jobs in the past month. Most have stayed. All positions critical to plant safety are filled. Our supply chain has been affected. Some spare parts were scheduled to come from areas like Sumy and Kharkiv that are in the heart of the war zone. We've lost contact with our suppliers, and finding alternative sources, maybe somewhere in Europe, is becoming a burning issue. It's a process that will take some time though. Spent fuel processing is also looming large down the stretch. We planned to transport our fuel assemblies to the dedicated storage set up at the Chernobyl plant, but it's controlled by the enemy now.
So this is a kind of, it's a process that they need to do, that they normally do at these other...
Yes, the issue is not critical at the moment, but it needs to be resolved in the near future. Our corporation has invested years and millions to build and develop the Chernobyl storage facility. Rivne, Khmelnytsky, and South Ukraine nuclear power plants depend on it to dispose of their spent fuel and radioactive waste materials. Zaporizhzhia is the only plant in Ukraine that has its own storage on site. Again, Chernobyl perimeter is controlled by the enemy at the moment, and thus we have no means available to dispose of our spent fuel.
How have they gone about protecting the plant? Of course, the invasion hasn't reached here yet, but we're in a volatile situation. What is the plan to keep the plant safe?
I don't know how likely it is. We expect them to come from Belarus. The border is pretty close nearby, and it's the shortest route to get to us. Our team has considered and addressed all possible scenarios that could be in play here, but it's all classified information. We are hoping our plant and our town will remain peaceful and calm, as they've always been, but let me just tell you that we are prepared for everything. The risk remains high. After all, we are in the middle of war. The most danger comes from an airstrike. Russia has deployed hundreds, thousands of bombs, missiles, and airplanes to hit our peaceful infrastructure from the air, and clearly there is more to come. We need to close the sky. It's the only way.
What would an errant shell landing near here mean? In other words, if this plant were to somehow be mistakenly, even if not purposefully hit, what would happen?
Worst case, it leads to a nuclear accident, possibly as big as the Chernobyl or Fukushima. Exactly how bad the fallout is going to be is difficult to assess. It will depend on a multitude of factors. One thing is certain, it will leave a nuclear footprint on half the world for decades to come. And that's enough said.
And how close has shelling come to here already in the past month?
We've had a drone taken down by our air defense weapons about 5 kilometers away from the plant. The closest airstrike took place in Sarny.
The Soviets built this place. Does that raise his concerns or actually lessen them in terms of their already having knowledge, of course, of what this place is and where it is and
You
all
mean
of
Russians?
Yeah.
I don't see it carry any added risk for us, to be honest. Sure, from a technical perspective, they are well informed to arrange a possible sabotage mission here. Both our 440 megawatt and 1000 megawatt units are Russian design, and they have all the blueprints and technical specs, as well as personnel with intricate knowledge of our operational procedures. Yes, they know our technology very well, but they would still have to arrange it from the inside. And to that end, we have set up a pretty extensive physical barriers to counter. We constantly work to eliminate any potential internal threats. So I expect it will be impossible for them to put their knowledge of our technology to good use. Besides, you'd have to be insane to arrange a nuclear incident here, as we are right in the middle of Europe. Belarus, which is mere 60 kilometers away, will be the first one to suffer the consequences.
That was my next question. 5 kilometers away, any kind of shooting, whether it's a shell or not, seems like it would have to be interpreted as a message or some kind of intimidation to be so close to something that could spark a disaster like this. Is that how he sees it? Because presumably, I mean, I don't know what happened in this incident. I'd be curious to know, because it seems like a huge risk to, even if he agrees that they're not crazy enough to spark a disaster like this, it's still...
That's what I'm talking about. We are considering all our options to minimize the risk of a nuclear disaster and prevent a possible terrorist attack on our site. We are working on that all the time.
This is the last question that I have, but is there anything that he particularly wants to convey to a global audience like ours?
Yes, there is a number of international organizations that have proven effective to regulate nuclear power production around the world in times of peace. The main ones are International Atomic Energy Agency and World Association of Nuclear Operators. For obvious reasons, we cut our ties with the Moscow WANO office shortly after the war broke out. In my opinion, they have not done enough today to prevent a looming nuclear disaster in our country. They seem to be heavily influenced by their respective political agenda and have not produced any effective action yet. Even if they state they have, many organizations like United Nations and some others have voiced their loud concern with the situation Ukraine is facing today. Unfortunately, IAEA have been slow to react, and WANO, to my knowledge, have not even openly opposed the Russian aggression yet. Their actions are focused on protecting the rest of Europe and collecting relevant information on levels of radioactive aerial pollution from our nuclear sites. I want to remind them that our common primary goal today is to do everything in power to stop this war and prevent any nuclear incidents from ever happening. And they've done next to nothing to help that. Let me say that both WANO and IAEA employ a large number of Russian nationals, and I suspect there has been some undue political influence in play here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.